You're listening to a production of the National Media Archive. To learn more or volunteer, go to nationalmediaarchive.com.
Picture this. It's early 1937 in New London, Texas, and the town's practically humming with new wealth. Oil had been struck just 7 years earlier, and suddenly a sleepy agricultural community became one of the richest school districts in America. You might be thinking, did oil really change everything that fast? Absolutely. The population boomed as engineers, workers, and their families poured in, bringing with them dreams of prosperity. Roads, businesses, and homes sprouted almost overnight, and the town skyline, if you could call it that, was reshaped by oil derricks and new buildings. Black gold had rewritten New London's destiny, fueling not just the economy, but a sense of limitless possibility. Now, think about the term wildcatter. It's an oil industry nickname for independent prospectors, risk takers who jump into oil fields hoping to get rich quick. And in New London, wildcatters were everywhere, changing the local culture and raising the stakes for everyone. But rapid change isn't always smooth sailing. When a town goes from rural calm to bustling boomtown, infrastructure can struggle to keep up, leading to risky decision zones that, as we'll see, have consequences. Let me tell you a story. Before oil, New London's biggest concern was surviving the Great Depression. Now, the town was flush with cash, and a new state-of-the-art school stood as its proudest achievement. So, as we dig into what happened next, remember, prosperity can be a double-edged sword bringing both opportunity and unexpected danger. Close your eyes and imagine the New London School in 1937, $1 million building, equivalent to $23 million today. That's not just impressive, it's unprecedented for a rural town. The school was designed in a California Spanish style with a bright red tile roof, spacious classrooms, and even state-of-the-art science labs. You might wonder, why invest so much? Simple. Education was seen as the foundation of civic pride and future success. The building wasn't just a school, it was the community's heartbeat. It boasted the first football stadium with floodlights in East Texas and cutting-edge amenities like a natural gas heating system. For many families, this was a symbol of arrival, the proof that New London had entered the modern era. But here's where a technical term comes in: infrastructure. That's the underlying framework that keeps a building functional and safe. And while the school's infrastructure was advanced for its time, not every decision would stand the test of time. Now, you might be thinking, with all this innovation, what could possibly go wrong? That's exactly what the townspeople believed, a belief that would be tragically shattered. Because sometimes, it's the pride in what we build that blinds us to the hidden risks lurking just beneath the surface. Let's talk about a pivotal moment that set the stage for disaster. When the New London School was built, there was a debate. Should they use a centralized steam boiler or install dozens of individual gas heaters? The school board insisted on gas heaters, arguing it was the modern and economical choice. Sounds sensible, right? After all, natural gas was abundant and cheap, especially with oil companies burning off excess supply. But here's the kicker. By 1937, with budgets tightening, the board sought to save even more. They tapped directly into the residue gas, linear byproduct of oil drilling, also called casing head gas. This gas was odorless and colorless, making leaks nearly impossible to detect. Now, you might be wondering, wasn't this risky? Absolutely. But at the time, it was common practice. Utility regulation was loose, and safety standards were minimal. Decisions like these highlight a crucial technical term: risk tolerance, the amount of risk a community or organization is willing to accept for perceived benefits. Let me put it this way. In the 1930s, the drive to save money sometimes trumped caution. Nobody foresaw the chain reaction that would begin with a simple, cost-cutting choice. This is where our story takes a fateful turn, the kind that changes a community forever. March 18th started out as just another school day. Students hurried to class, teachers prepped lessons, and the air buzzed with the usual pre-spring break excitement. At 3:00 p.m., elementary students were dismissed, and the high schoolers were minutes away from freedom. The school was packed, over 500 students still inside. But something invisible was brewing below. A natural gas leak had been filling the school's basement undetected. The gas, remember, both odorless and colorless, crept silently upwards. A few students complained of headaches or nausea, but it was chalked up to the usual school complaints. Here's where the idea of a latent hazard comes in, a technical term for a danger that's present but not immediately obvious. The school's infrastructure, so modern on the surface, was hiding a ticking time bomb below. Now, you might ask, why didn't anyone notice? With no warning signs, no smell, no sound, there was nothing to alert staff or students. The stage was set for tragedy, and nobody knew it. If only the school bell had rung 15 minutes earlier, history would have been very different. But fate had other plans. At 3:17 p.m., the unthinkable happened. The manual training instructor switched on an electric sender ironically nicknamed Old Sparky for its unreliable safety record. That tiny spark was all it took. Instantly, the accumulated gas erupted, blowing the roof skyward before collapsing the building inwards. Eyewitnesses described the school bulging, then exploding with such force that walls, floors, and ceilings crashed down on hundreds inside. The blast was heard for miles. Imagine the chaos: dust, debris, screams, then a sudden, haunting silence. Ever heard the term chain reaction? That's when one event triggers a rapid sequence of others. Here, the spark set off a chemical chain reaction, turning the school into a death trap in seconds. You might be thinking, could anyone have survived such destruction? Against all odds, some did, but for many, rescue would be too late. This was the moment New London changed forever, a community's pride reduced to rubble in a single, explosive heartbeat. In the minutes that followed, panic gave way to desperate action. Parents, teachers, oil workers, everyone rushed to the site, clawing through the debris with bare hands, shovels, anything they could grab. The entire community mobilized instantly. Businesses closed. Even distant towns sent help. The rescue effort was relentless, heroic, and heartbreaking. A technical term here is triage, the process of prioritizing who needs urgent medical care. Makeshift clinics sprang up, and the brand new hospital in Tyler, set to open the next day, was overwhelmed by the injured. Let me tell you a story. Rescuers would pause, listening for faint cries beneath the rubble. Sometimes, the only sound was the shifting of debris. Other times, a child's voice calling out, sparking a new surge of hope. Now, you might ask, how do you keep going in the face of so much devastation? The answer: you don't think, you just do. That's the power of community in crisis. But as night fell and headlights illuminated the ruins, the true scale of loss became painfully clear. New London would never be the same. The days after the explosion were a blur of funerals, so many that the cemetery held 3 or 4 services an hour, the estimated death toll around 294, most of them children. For a town of just a few thousand, it was an almost unimaginable loss. Virtually every family was touched by tragedy. One survivor recalled, "I saw fathers fighting over dead children, yelling, 'That's mine!' Identification was nearly impossible. Bodies were mangled, and in many cases, only fingerprints taken for a state exposition the summer before could confirm who was lost." Here's a technical term: forensic identification. It's the science of determining a person's identity after death, often using fingerprints or dental records. In this case, it was a grim blessing that most children had been fingerprinted the previous year. Now, you might be thinking, how does a community recover from this? The truth? Many didn't. Some families moved away, unable to face the memories. Others stayed, determined to rebuild. The search for answers began, but for many, closure would remain elusive, a wound that would scar New London for generations. Naturally, the next step was to find out who was responsible. The governor ordered a full inquiry. Investigators struggled. The explosion had erased most physical evidence. Eventually, the cause was traced to a faulty gas connection and the unauthorized tapping of the residue gas line. But here's a tricky technical term: liability, the legal responsibility for an accident or harm. Despite overwhelming evidence of negligence, no school officials or board members were found criminally liable. The courts ruled that neither the school board nor the oil company could be held directly accountable. Now, you might ask, how could nobody be held responsible for such a tragedy? The answer lies in the patchwork of 1,930 laws and the difficulty of proving intent or direct causation. This lack of justice infuriated families. Superintendent W.C. Shaw, who lost his own son, niece, and nephew, was forced to resign amid rumors of vigilante violence. The investigation may not have delivered legal closure, but it did set the stage for sweeping change. The New London disaster forced America to confront its lax safety standards. Within months, Texas passed a law requiring all natural gas to be odorized, that is, mixed with a strong-smelling chemical so leaks could be detected before disaster struck. This additive, mercaptan, smells like rotten eggs and was a game-changer for public safety. The technical terms here are odorant and utility regulation. An odorant is a substance added to gas to make it detectable. Utility regulation refers to government rules ensuring that companies operate safely and reliably. Now, you might be wondering, why wasn't this done before? Sometimes it takes tragedy to shine a spotlight on hidden dangers. Beyond odorization, building codes were overhauled. New rules required better wiring, safer heating systems, and fire-resistant materials, especially in schools. Inspections became more rigorous and frequent. This was the silver lining, a preventable tragedy that forced the nation to prioritize safety over convenience and cost-cutting. Decades later, the scars of the New London explosion run deep. Survivors and their families carry the trauma for generations, sometimes in silence, sometimes through stories passed down. For years, few spoke of what happened, but recent documentaries and books have reignited public memory. You might be asking, why is this tragedy still relevant? Because the lessons are timeless: the importance of regulation, the dangers of invisible risks, and the cost of ignoring safety for short-term gain. Terms like emergency preparedness and public oversight became part of the national vocabulary, not just for schools, but for all public spaces. Regular safety drills, staff training, and stricter utility monitoring became non-negotiable. Let me leave you with this. The New London disaster wasn't just a local tragedy. It changed U.S. policy, saved countless future lives, and reminds us that vigilance and humility are the price of progress. So next time you catch that faint smell of gas, remember it's not just a warning. It's the legacy of a town that paid the ultimate price to keep the rest of us safe.